Hello everyone, what is going on? So, the show that is the new big hype that everyone is talking about, especially here in Alberta, because it was actually filmed mostly here in Alberta, in Calgary and Edmonton, and a couple other surrounding cities. The Last of Us is actually out now, and now it's done up to episode 2. So even though I never played the Last of Us games, or was even really much of a fan of The Walking Dead, another kind of zombie survival show, I still wanted to check this one out because the games have a lot of hype behind it, a lot of story, and I really like Pedro Pascal as an actor, so I kind of wanted to check this one out, and I've been liking it quite a bit so far. Here's some of my thoughts on the first 2 episodes. I actually really like how it started off in the 1960s in this kind of like talk show interview style, kind of discussing the differences between like a viral infection like that we know to this day, especially with things like COVID, and things like a fungal infection, which this is kind of based off of. We're kind of talking about how this fungus is more kind of like spreading and just growing outward, and how it's the fungus's way of surviving and growing and spreading it.
Cordyceps, aspergillus, any one of them could become capable of burrowing into our brains and taking control not of millions of us, but billions of us.
And then I like how they're setting at least the first half of the show in 2003, because it really helps kind of pull in their kind of target demographic of people my age and maybe a little bit older, because then you're setting in things like nostalgia. Because the people that would be watching the show would be in their late 20s to mid 30s now, and so they would have been young kids to teenagers in this time period of 2003. So having this nostalgia kind of right from the get-go helps draw their audience in. But going into the details of the actual outbreak, I really like how one of the first times we see someone kind of transforming, quote unquote, into one of these kind of creatures, infected as they call them, is when it has just the slight little horror aspects to how the episode is actually being filmed. Like we just have a front shot of Sarah talking to another kind of side character, and you just see the grandmother in the background there start slowly twitching and maneuvering, and her body kind of reacting to the fungi and spreading throughout her body. And then how it kind of just cuts back to Sarah there, just not noticing any real difference. Such a good horror aspect to it. It's so well shot. And then later that evening, when they actually show what is truly happening, one of the first time we really see the infected kind of going and spreading the fungal infection to someone else. I really like the details of how the tendrils of the fungi kind of spray out of the mouth like that, and just kind of cling on to the next host. The fungus is literally just trying to spread, so it's sort of such a small amount of detail going into the next person that the grandmother is attacking there. One of the other things I kind of wanted to talk about of this first half of this first episode was the driving away scene of all 3 of the main characters kind of escaping the town. I just really love how it's shot and makes it look kind of like literally like a video game cutscene, and how the camera is inside the vehicle with you, and you're seeing kind of from Sarah's kind of perspective of what's going on, and you can tell on how dramatic the infection is starting to spread, how quickly it's already going, considering this was just overnight. We saw a few people in their neighborhood already get infected, and then military showing up, roads being shut down. It's spreading so quickly. You can see on how intense this is actually going to end up being. And then going into probably the saddest moment of the show, and true HBO fashion, who cares if they're a main character? Someone's gotta die. Having the scene with the faceless kind of military officer threatening to shoot Joe and Sarah there as they're trying to get out of the town, just kind of following orders, ends up shooting Sarah, and she doesn't make it through this whole situation. It's so heart-wrenching because it's like, okay, like we finally already have a character that we're getting introduced to, and as I said before, someone that is tied into nostalgia of being a teenager in 03. You have no idea what's going to happen, and already someone is dead. And then, going into the second half of this first episode, setting it 20 years later, sets it right into 2023, we start to see the extremes of how this infection has kind of literally taken over the entire world. And it kind of gives us the oh shit feeling of how COVID has had affected our entire world. With having that, makes you draw your audience back in even more, because you get not only the nostalgia of 03, but the realism of 2020 to 2023. Going into the actual details here though, I really liked how they shown how extreme the military is taking the outbreak by showing this kid trying to get back from wherever he was into some form of civilization, showing, yes, the positive test result of him being infected, and cutting to Joel being the one taking care of this now dead kid, and kind of just mirroring his sorrow reaction of at the beginning of the show of when Sarah died, compared to his just mundane, not giving a shit, kind of just dead inside attitude now of having to get rid of this young, maybe 10-year-old kid. Just shows on how much life has changed in the 20 years. Then we get introduced to the real kind of core of the show, the actual real meaning behind it, the kind of oppression that happens when someone is there trying to help or save you. In other words, with the full military governed organization of the QZ, the quarantine zone, we see this kind of faction kind of growing up in the underground, and it's through these kind of factions that we see how the kind of real people are trying to actually live their life and get away from the oppression of the military. Then in these factions is where we kind of start getting introduced to Tess, our new secondary character, Joel's companion, we'll say. And then through the main underground organization, the Fireflies, is where we get introduced to our secondary main character, Ellie, who at this point is important, something to do with her infection, but we don't really know what. And therefore, that kind of gets us launched into what the main plot of the story is about, getting her to Joel and Tess to get her out of the QZ, which then essentially launches us into episode 2. Episode 2 opens up just as similar as episode 1, where we're now in the past, back in 2003. And we're on what is most likely officially day 1 of the outbreak. So we're following an Indonesian microbiologist who is an expert on this fungi, and trying to get her help to discover what to do about the problem. I really like her honest, harsh opinion of literally just saying like, well, it's happened, it's spreading, there's literally nothing to do, there's no cure. So the only thing we can do to stop the spread, literally how she just says it, literally in just one word, simply just bomb. Just blow up the entire city, everyone in it. That's the only way we're gonna kill everyone. That's just the only solution, because there is no cure for this. There is no vaccine. There's nothing that they can create. So it's just, I really like her just straight up bluntness. After she saw the horror of how quickly it spread, even just through 14 people, she knows that even that little amount of people, it's gonna make it spread massively. Then cutting back into modern day, Joel, Tess, and Ellie are now out of the QZ and trying to actually figure out their plan of what they're actually going to fully be doing. Joel and Tess are, of course, on high alert, as they're not sure what is going on with Ellie as to why she's so important. They're both quite high-strung as to what the full situation is going to actually be. Joel wanting to just go back, bring her back to the QZ. Ellie willing to push forward with the plan. I really like Ellie's expression when she first steps out and sees how much is so different in comparison to the QZ. So we now get to see on how much the world has actually changed in these 20 years. From the militarized explosions trying to tear down cities, the infection growing to people and buildings spreading, and Earth itself just growing into more of its natural environment pre-humans of plants and everything everywhere, really shows on how much has actually changed in that 20 years. I like how they kind of use Ellie as like a stand-in here, like for the audience. So the exposition of how the creatures work, what makes them react, and like how everything is spreading.
So there aren't super infected that explode fungus spores on you?
Shit, I hope not.
Or ones with split open heads that see in the dark like bats?
Joel is explaining everything to Ellie herself as a young child, therefore explaining to us, the audience. But it doesn't make it seem so mundane, like A, B, C is happening, therefore X, Y, Z is happening. It's general conversation, and she's just trying to learn about this outside world, therefore it's exposition to us, but not in a very just droll, mundane way. And going forward, I really like how they still give Ellie a bit of like a teenager, like her actual like kind of teenagery type attitude of being very kind of jokey and sarcastic. There were kind of three major examples of this. Right at the very beginning of the episode, when Joel makes a reference to Tess about saying if she twitches once, and you just see Tess in the background kind of just jokingly twitching around. And then with her going through the hotel and pretending to be checking someone in through the concierge, when Joel and Ellie are sitting waiting for Tess to get through to the other side of the building, she pulls out her knife just to kind of fiddle with it. Joel simply just asks, "Oh, where'd you learn that?" And she goes, "The circus." Like, it's just a quick little nod, like kind of showing her still childlike side of like, even though there's this kind of shitty situation going on, you're still allowed to kind of have fun here and there. And then what ends up happening, the hotel route ends up being completely blocked off, so they have to go change to a different area, which then gets us into the full, more horror aspect of what the show truly is. And we see actually how intense the actual infected actually are and how creepy and intense they can be. And then with this, we get into the full, more video game style cinematography again, showing all three kind of crouching, hiding, trying to get around the one really intense infected that is sensing them in a way. Doesn't actually see them. There's even a point when it shows it looking at them through a glass box, so it doesn't have any eyes to physically see it, but because they're still being silent, it can't really sense that they're there. So we get more of the kind of video game action of sneaking around and avoiding it instead of trying to shoot off right from the get-go and making more noise and more issues to get more of them towards you. So you want to kind of be a little more stealthy, kind of like how the video game would be. And of course, something's still bound to happen, and you're going to get to some sort of gunfight and shootout, because you still have to have not only the horror, but the action involved with it as well. Then, by the end of the episode, we find out that throughout this interaction with the infected, Tess ends up actually getting infected herself, which, in my opinion, was pretty obvious that someone was going to, and it was most likely going to be her anyway, considering the show is about Joel and Ellie, so she wasn't going to last very long, in my opinion anyway. But then, in true Hollywood fashion, we gotta end the episode off with a bang. Tess sacrificing herself so Joel and Ellie can escape, and exploding the whole building that they were in. And of course, Ellie, being the kid that she is, not wanting to leave her behind. So we end the episode just on Ellie just reacting to the person that she finally had a bit of a mother figure in her life, finally, and now she's already gone. So there you go. There's my thoughts, opinion, kind of review of the first 2 episodes of The Last of Us. So far, I've been liking it quite a bit. I'm definitely going to continue watching it for sure. Are you liking the show so far? Let me know your thoughts and opinions on the first 2 episodes and what you're kind of hyped for the episodes coming forward. Comment here below. Hopefully you liked this 2-episode style breakdown instead of the usual just per episode breakdown that most people do. I think this way gives a little bit more detail instead of just going into episode by episode, so you can actually compare and contrast each episode a little bit. So that's it for me. Hopefully you liked it. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.